Unit 3, Presentation 5, a Reentry Plan. The Reentry Plan is a really important part of the parole packet. As we've mentioned many times, to prepare well for reentry is to prepare well for a parole hearing, and vice versa. A reentry plan can be broken down into 3 elements: the home plan, the employment plan, and a reentry support plan. So in terms of the home plan, the person won't even be released until the home plan has been checked out. And then in terms of the employment plan, having a job lined up is technically an actual requirement for being granted parole, although that is sometimes waived. And during COVID, it was, I think, waived almost all the time because of the job situation then. A reentry support plan, that goes more generally to whatever resources and family support are available to the person. So those resources could be more family and friend type resources, or they could be programs, whether it's AA or other kind of reentry services, depending on what the person's needs are. So the role of the parole advocate in the reentry plan is to engage the person's family and friends, to follow up on any leads or ideas that the person has for their reentry, and to help with researching and connecting with reentry services. When researching reentry services for Baltimore, the website returnhome.org is an excellent resource. You should start there. Home plan. This is about when the home plan is for transitional housing. So transitional housing that includes with it programming to assist with reentry is a really positive option from the Parole Commission's perspective. They often feel more comfortable granting parole when someone has that kind of home plan set up versus going back to a family member. Watch out about transitional housing. Some of the providers are non-profits and therefore don't charge, and others are not. And so insurance and fees and that kind of thing will have to be considered from the start. So try to make sure you understand what the financial implications are for someone going into transitional housing. And many of the transitional housing programs will be aware of the parole paradigm and the fact that a grant of parole is not guaranteed, and that even if the outcome is positive, release may not happen for a while. However, do your best to keep the transitional housing informed of what's going on. If they've offered the person a spot, let them know if the parole hearing's delayed, if the person gets a grant of parole, but it's not for another 6 months. Keep them posted on the timing because they're usually trying to manage beds. Try to get as far along in the application process as possible. And oftentimes, a person will not be all the way along in that process when they go to their hearing. But get what you can in writing in terms of where the person is up to. If they have a guaranteed spot, then that's perfect. You want that letter guaranteeing that spot in the parole packet. But if it's not that solid yet, try to get what you can in terms of just evidence that best efforts are being made. And if there isn't a confirmed place, then set out what the plan B would be as well. You don't have to put too much detail, but if this transitional housing doesn't come about, then the person's home plan will be whatever you state it's going to be. So the other kind of home plan generally would be with family or friends. And this is fairly common. And a lot of people just want to get home to family or friends. They don't really want to go to another institution, even though in many ways for some people that is going to be a more likely to bring about long-term success. But if they do have a home plan with family and friends, and that can be the right thing for some people, the Parole Commission will want to know that represents a stable home. So include in the parole packet a letter from the person whose house it is confirming the home plan. And as the parole advocate, if that person doesn't have a printer or something like that, what you can do is speak with them over the phone, figure out what they want to say in the letter, draft the letter, mail it to them for their signature, include a stamped addressed envelope, have them mail it back to you, and now you have that letter for the parole packet. And the letter should set out the address, who lives in the house, what the relationships are, and even where within the house the parolee will sleep. So is there a bedroom for them? What's that setup going to be? If it is with a home plan in a family or friend situation, then the question becomes, okay, well, what reentry support programming beyond that will be available for the person? Employment plan. It can be really hard getting a job in prison. So some options to consider is work release programs. Now, some of this stuff ended with COVID or was postponed with COVID, so you have to be sure about what's happening right now. But work release jobs within a pre-release unit can be a really good option, and that would be a question of liaising with the case manager. Work release is generally in the gift of the warden. Then if the person's worked, if their prison job has been with MCE, Maryland Correctional Enterprises, for some people there's options to stay employed by MCE on the outside, and those can be some really solid employment opportunities for people with continuity and a guaranteed paycheck and that kind of thing, and that can look good on a parole packet. So include that. Family and friends sometimes provide job opportunities, particularly if they own their own business. If that is the case, just as with home plans, work with that family or friend to get something in writing in the parole packet. And then there are nonprofits which provide work opportunities. Living Classrooms Project Serve in Baltimore City is one example of that, but they are geared up to helping returning citizens get into the workplace and have a paycheck from the start. And sometimes a former employer will be willing to take someone back. So a parole advocate could be involved in the communication in terms of liaising with that former employer and again, getting documentation for the parole packet. Document. I can't say this strongly enough. It looks way better to have something in writing in the parole packet than it being down to the person themselves getting to the parole hearing and saying, well, yeah, my friend William, he's got his own business. He says he'll give me a job. Have that letter from William in the parole packet, and maybe even have William on the call when you do the conference call or the parole advocacy meeting at the Parole Commission. Where there is no concrete job offer yet, what you need to do is set out the qualifications and the skills, what the plan is for looking for a job, what they've been doing while incarcerated, maybe what they did before, just as positive as possible. Get something in the parole packet about where things are going in terms of employment. If the person will be entitled to disability when they leave prison, then no job offer is required. So, but again, make sure that's in writing in the parole packet. The reentry support plan. The foundational layer for this is definitely the person's family and friends. So you want to have a sense of who will be around them. Then the next layer would be the broader community, such as a church or other community organisations that maybe the family or the person's involved in. And then the next layer would be professional support services. So if a person's home plan is with a family member, then look into some non-residential reentry support programs. So an example would be in Baltimore City, the Pivot program, which is for women. It's not a residential program, but for the first number of weeks that the person is home, they get a stipend and they get a lot of reentry support that's tailored to whatever their needs are and helps them with workplace readiness and that kind of thing. Other support services on the next layer could be things like AA and NA, depending on what the person's background and what their needs are. The reentry plan in the parole packet, I would suggest that you get it down to one page that just sets out the basics with all three elements, just a very basic summary of home plan, employment plan, and reentry support plan. And then behind that one page, that's where you include the supporting documentation and that kind of thing. And if they're going to an organization, say Pivot, which I mentioned was the non-residential reentry support program for women in Baltimore City, you could print out from the website a flyer that documents what support services are entailed and tuck that behind the letter of acceptance for that. And then again, that's just fleshing out for the Parole Commission what sort of services the person's going to be receiving. Thank you.